How's it going, fam? Let's talk about Civilization 6's Rise and Fall expansion. I realize this has been out for a couple weeks already, but I wanted to talk about it because now I finally feel like I have my overall thoughts formulated on it, and I can comfortably say whether or not I think it's worth the price and all that good stuff. Obviously, big strategy games, 4X games, turn-based games like Civilization take a little while before you really have a handle on all the different tacks you can take and all the stuff that gets added in. I think I'm finally there though, so let's talk about it. As a note though, hi to all the new viewers and or subscribers that might be watching this. I will give you guys an update on the DMCA situation on my channel currently, but that's not going to happen until there is an update to give. And for the time being, at least, I'm going to just kind of carry on as normal, and this was the next thing that I kind of wanted to get out there on my list of stuff to do that's ever growing. So bear with me on that. When there is stuff to talk about, I will. I don't want to oversaturate for you guys, so, you know, that's my statement on that right now. So Civilization 6 Rise and Fall. Is it a good expansion? Is it worth your money? What do I think of it as a casual Civilization player? I wouldn't say I'm super in-depth with the entire franchise. I think altogether I have 64 hours right now in Civilization 6 and about 250 or so in Civilization 5. So I know the series well enough. I'm never going to be a min-maxer, a micromanager of it. So if you're looking for that in-depth kind of coverage, I'm probably not your guy. This video is more suited for people who maybe haven't bought the base game yet, or they have it, and they are wondering whether or not they want to get into the new expansion now while it's still $30 on Steam. So what exactly does Civilization 6 Rise and Fall add into the series that we didn't already have? Well, let's go with the really easy part to start out with. There are a total of 9 new civilizations to play as. I guess it's technically 8 because they added in another version of India that you can play that isn't Gandhi, but it's still a totally different one. Like, you can have 2 Indias playing in the same game, so it's 9 civilizations. They're pretty cool, they do some really different stuff, and it's good to have that extra content added in because they obviously act differently, use different tactics when you're playing with them and against them, all that good stuff, and it's 9 new ones. That's a lot for an expansion. I'm quite happy with that. And as I said, these civilizations add in different play styles when you're playing as them or against them. Personally, my favorite one so far has been the Cree because I'm very much a non-military player. I put a lot of focus on gaining gold and getting trade routes started, and that's kind of what they're the best at. I also really enjoy playing as the Zulu though, when I wanted to get really aggressive with my gameplay, so they have a really cool option, and they're probably my favorite civ to play around with because their really unique bonus is that when they take over cities, or they can make them at their encampments as well, they can actually make cores, and cores are when you have like 2 of one unit and you like merge them together to make a super powerful unit. That's more powerful than just having 1 on a tile is. It's kind of their answer to not having stacks in Civilization 5. So they were a really cool civilization for me to play around with because I could really get aggressive very early on, and it kind of continued. It was one of the only times where I've ever been really encouraged, I felt, to play a very military style when I'm playing. Usually I end up going to the culture or scientific victories. So what else is new in Civilization 6 Rise and Fall? Well, there's 2 main things, and one of them I like, one of them I'm kind of iffy on. Let's talk about the one I like first of all here. There's a new age system in the game that works with what's called era score. So when you're playing the game, you start out in a normal age, and every time you do specific tasks, it might be things like discovering natural wonders at the start, but later on, if you're in a normal era, you can choose to get like little bonuses if you do stuff like complete a trade route or attack enemies, stuff like that. If you get your era score all the way filled up and then get it even further all the way around again, you enter what's called a golden age or a golden era as well. That will last all the way through, say like if you're in the medieval era, it'll go through all that up until the Renaissance era, etc. And you'll get bonuses for it. So you can choose like between 4 different bonuses. If you're in a golden age, if you're in a normal age, you then get to decide between stuff that's going to increase your era score to hopefully get you to a golden age as well. If you don't fill it up all the way, you'll go into what's called a dark age, which will have some negative effects on you. One dark age usually isn't that bad, but if they stack, they can really build up and kind of harm your progress in the game. Alternatively, though, you do get access to some very powerful cards in the government system as well. So even the Dark Age, it can have a really good effect on your civilization if you know how to play it to your benefit. So when you're using your cards in your government screen, which are usually things like, oh, you get +1 gold to all your trade routes and stuff like that, you'll get some special wildcard ones that are specifically for Dark Ages that will increase your productivity but lower something else. They usually have a good effect and a bad effect. But, of course, if you're going for a scientific victory or a culture victory, or you really need to build more stuff, maybe it's worth taking one of those cards so you can get a big boost to something if you're not so worried about the drawback. And I think that's really cool. It's nice to have more options. It gives you a couple extra things to work towards while you're playing, some more reasons to explore in the early game, and to kind of like set into a specific way of doing things once you get to the point where you can choose, like, I want to get more points every time I trigger a cultural eureka or a research eureka, or every time I complete a trade route so I get more money. There's plenty of different options, and I think it's a really good addition to the base mechanics in the game. So the other major addition to this expansion is the loyalty system, and I'm of two minds with this one. I think it's a cool idea on paper. I'm not sure the execution of it is really that fun to mess around with, because it can make things like expanding your civilization in the early game very difficult. The way it basically works is, now when you're playing the game and you found a new city, you're going to get loyalty pressure from either your civilization or other civilizations around it, and that can be affected from cultural influence, or even like how close your civilization or your city there is to another one. So like the more cities that are around it, the more loyalty pressure is going to be coming on it from all different sides. Now, if you lose enough loyalty pressure, or a civilization does with that city, then it can become a free city. They're basically hostile to everyone, but if enough pressure from the loyalty of other cities around it is exerted into that city, you can potentially steal it from other players or have it stolen from you. Now, in theory, that's a pretty good idea. I mean, that does happen in the real world. In history, of course, there are parts of other countries that have declared independence, then joined up with other countries in the process afterwards and all that stuff. I think that's a really neat idea. The problem happens when you're in a war, or it's in the early game and you're trying to expand your civilization, or you take over someone else's city. It can be very difficult to keep them on your side. So in a lot of instances, it kind of makes raising cities more of a priority than it once was, because it's very difficult to keep some of these cities on your side. And again, this is why I like the Zulu, because they actually have a bonus when they conquer a city, they get more loyalty to it, so that's kind of nice. Again, that harkens back to a lot of stuff that's happened in history, and I think it's a neat idea. I just think it's kind of annoying to play through, especially if you're playing a civilization that is warmongering or trying to expand very quickly. In my experience, it's made all of my games play a little bit more conservatively than I would have before, and having less units overall to manage and play with in the game just isn't really as fun. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think some people are really going to like the loyalty system, and I do think it has some merits to it. I just think it's a little bit undercooked. It needs some other ideas to kind of enhance what you can do with it to increase loyalty and stuff. There are buildings and other ways you can increase loyalty to a city by placing a governor in there, for example. But still, I think it's kind of unnecessary, because it adds in this mechanic that you then have to supplement with all this other stuff as well, and it becomes kind of a mess to deal with. So those are what I view as the two major additions. There's also minor stuff like the governors now, so when you start up the game, you get points towards earning a governor. They can be upgraded to do specific things and give you specific bonuses. You can get one that boosts up your research and cultural output, or one that makes cities and militaries more easily defended, makes your military stronger, stuff like that. There's one for kind of every basic playstyle. And you can upgrade them to get some very powerful bonuses. I think that's a nice little addition to it. I would like to see a couple more get added, maybe in the next expansion as well, because now I feel like I've kind of used them all, and eventually it becomes like a very obvious decision which one you're gonna do as you go through the game. But I mean, it's extra stuff to do and extra bonuses to get, so that's totally fine with me. The next one I think is probably my least favorite addition to this game, and that is the emergency scenarios that they now have. So when you're playing the game, if someone's getting super far ahead, or if they do something super egregious, or enough guys don't agree with it and enough other civilizations, you will get what's called an emergency scenario that might involve you being the target or another civilization specifically being that target, and it tasks everyone else with trying to thwart their attempts. Like if they take over a city-state or if they take over someone else's city, you might be tasked with making them lose control of it, or maybe like someone takes it over with like religion or something like that. You have to get the religious pressure back off of them to another religion. There's a couple different ones. I've only had a couple of them happen as I've been playing, so I'm not as familiar with it yet, but it seems to be very random as to when it happens. I've heard some people get them all the time, and me, I've only had, I think, 3 of them in the probably 20 hours or so I've played the expansion. I find when they do happen, if I'm the target of them, it's been very easy to thwart them off, but if I'm trying to target someone else, like take back a city or something, you kind of need to rely on not only yourself, but the allies as well to kind of get that city back or complete the task, whatever it is. And to me, the AI isn't good enough to properly do that. Like, they don't seem to make a real attempt to stop the emergency once it's started, or fulfill their goal, whatever side they happen to be on. And that could be because I'm only playing on, like, Prince, or maybe a bit higher, depending on the game and the mood I'm in that night. But still, it seems like the AI isn't quite equipped to handle a lot of that stuff. So that's the biggest stuff you're going to notice when you start playing this. There's other little things too. There's a couple of new resources added, I believe. There's also new alliances you can form that aren't just military. So you have cultural alliances or research alliances, economic alliances. These all basically increase your productivity towards like science, or maybe getting more gold with trade routes with that specific civilization. Stuff like that. It's very basic, but it is nice because now you can prioritize a specific alliance with someone that you're doing a lot more trading with, or someone who you're going to war with them against someone else. It's a nice addition, and I'm glad to see it in. So for $30, is this a good expansion? I feel like right now it might be a little bit overpriced for what you're getting. If you really like Civilization 6 and you're playing it every day, you've probably already bought it. It's probably a no-brainer. If you're a person who's still playing Civilization 5, you're probably going to wait till the next expansion comes out, or there's like a Game of the Year edition released, and I think that's probably the best idea. It's not bad, it's just like Civilization is in that weird spot where every time a game gets released, a lot of people stick with the old one until the expansions are released for the next one, because that increases the game flow and improves the game like tenfold every time. For me, it gave me a reason to dive back in for another 20 hours, and I think that was kind of worth my time. I had a lot of fun playing it, but I don't know, there's some stuff I feel like could have been tweaked a bit more. Maybe some of the systems could have been fleshed out a bit too. Overall, it's fine. I'd make a decision for yourself. If you want some really in-depth stuff, go check out some good reviews from guys who like play Civilization on their YouTube channel exclusively. That would definitely be my recommendation. So yeah, I don't know, I talked a lot. I don't know if I answered any of your questions or convinced you either way. I feel like my videos usually aren't about convincing people. It's more about giving you extra tools to make your own decision. So go out there with your confidence and make good decisions in your life, or be happy with the decisions you make, whether it be buying this game or not. I don't know. I also don't really care. It's your life, it's not mine. Bye. I just want you to take